Right now, a lot going on in the Philadelphia 76ers organization, including technical fouls to a player that's not even playing the game right now. There's a lot more to discuss, and can this hurt the Sixers going forward after they just got their first big win?
You are Locked On 76ers, your daily Philadelphia 76ers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 76ers. Kayla Santiago, Keith Pompey with you each and every day here on the Locked On Network as we're going to unpack a ton of things here. Your favorite podcast now has a newsletter introducing the Locked On 76ers daily newsletter introducing the Locked On to the network, the one stop for the ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. Make sure you sign up for free now at LockedOnDaily.com. That's LockedOnDaily.com, and start your day with all new free Locked On 76ers newsletter. Today's episode is sponsored by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LockedOnNBA for $20 off your first purchase. So there's a lot to unpack here, and the Philadelphia 76ers haven't even played last night. So you look at it right now. Fines and technical fouls being delivered to this organization. Embiid and Paul George still waiting on their return, and how we're going to look and overview the next two games for this team with or without PG and Joel. First and foremost, we have to start out with just the non-transparency of this organization. This is something we have talked about since the beginning before the season started. What's going on with the knee? Is there really an injury? Did he injure in the playoffs? And Nick Nurse and everyone in that coach's organization said, well, no, Joel's fine. He's revamping. He's trying to get better. It's a process. And the NBA says, well, we're going to hit you with a fine because you're telling us that he's not injured. Will this be the turn of tides that maybe the Sixers start answering these questions truthfully? Because at the end of the day, Keith, to me, I think this could hurt the team more than help the team.
Yeah, I think it could hurt them more than help them, but I don't think they're going to start answering truthfully. I think what's going to happen is what happened, during Tuesday's practice, where Nick Nurse refused to answer any questions about Joel Embiid or about the injury, saying, hey, we sent out a press release. So the thing is, I think that it looks bad right now. It does. And I feel like what they're doing is they're just going to give out less information. And it makes it look worse, if you know what I mean, because I feel like we talk about lack of transparency. Nick Nurse has been the only person speaking thus far. Joel has not spoke to the media since October the 3rd. Paul George has not spoken to the media since October the 14th with his injury, right, in a setting, in a formal interview setting. So it's kind of sort of like Nick Nurse was the only guy speaking, and then they're using his words to say, well, you're the one that's saying he's not injured, but they're saying something else. So it's kind of like I just feel like they're just going to circle the wagons even more, and it makes them look bad as an organization.
And how many fines can the NBA really slap on this organization? Because there has been no telltale as to when Joel Embiid will come back. So clearly, if Nick Nurse is not going to back down and his mindset is to protect his players, fine. But then it's going to be fine after fine after fine coming the way to this organization. And Paul George is a different circumstance. I think he'll be back a little bit sooner than Joel Embiid, but clearly there's something going on here. So I think that Joel re-aggravated that knee during the Olympics, and then he got into the preseason. He wasn't 100%, and Nick Nurse is saying, okay, well, let's not rush him back because they want to have him for the postseason. Fine, cool, that's fantastic. But nobody is saying that. So is that going on? Is there no injury? Are they really just trying to sit him out until the postseason? Because it's a little bit strange. And I understand. I do like that Nick Nurse is trying to protect these players, but they're going to be in the headlines at all times at this point with fine after fine after fine if this continues to happen. And it stinks that we have to talk negative about this team because they just came off a fantastic win against the Pacers, and it's starting to get exciting, especially with Tyrese Maxey leading this group. But this is the topic of conversation now, even early in the season. We said in the offseason, Keith, and the preseason, no drama Sixers. Well, here we go. We knew it couldn't last for too long, right?
Yeah, I mean, the team is full of drama, I'll tell you that. And the thing is, like, I'm with you. I do believe that. I mean, I do believe there's something that probably happened. But I also think that it's one of those things where it's like it's all led by Joel. Like, I think that, Nick Nurse would love to have him out there playing, but I think Joel's not trying to push it until he's ready. Now, yesterday, I will say this. When I went there, I walked into the on the gym area, and he was drenched in sweat. He looked like he put in a good workout. He went and he sat in a chair next to one of the player development coaches, and then his shooting coach was right next to him. And he just seemed like he was getting his rest to probably do another workout once we left out of there. But it's just one of those things where I feel like he wants to come back on his time. And I think that is crazy. Now, the problem is, Nick Nurse, he does have his hands full. And the reason why he has his hands full is, this isn't like a backup center. This guy is arguably the best center in the league right now. He's a franchise player. So he has a lot of power. So it's kind of like if he doesn't want people to know what happened to him. So it's one of those things is if Nick Nurse does talk or someone else talks, then all of a sudden the player is upset with him. And then it could be even more drama because of that. So it's just a tough situation. But yes, the lack of transparency is something that they have to get better with.
It's something that I really don't like in this situation because I think you're bringing headlines to the Philadelphia 76ers for the wrong reason, and that could really affect the rest of the team too, because we've talked about this before a little bit. We said, well, then why are the Sixers going to rush PG back, as which we thought something might happen earlier on if Joel Embiid's not going to be rushed back. Now it's going to be the situation where Joel Embiid gets to make up his own timing back. So what happens when other people get hurt? Are they going to be able to have that same impact? If they're not, is it going to be an issue? There's a lot of different storylines and a lot of different things. And I think this will slow down once Joel Embiid actually gets out on the court. But the transparency is not there. And I think that's going to hurt the team more than help them. But something that I think this team, looking into it from that last game, it's going to involve Joel Embiid too. I don't agree with this. Now, I agree with the NBA saying we're going to give you a fine because you're not telling us anything, and these are the rules that we laid out. Listen, it stinks for Joel, but these are the rules of the NBA right now, and no transparency is in this organization. Something I don't agree with, though, is them giving Joel Embiid a fine the day after the game for the rally towel in the player's face. I mean, looking at it, the sixth man for the Philadelphia 76ers, you got to love the guy. He's always rally talent in everybody else's face. Drake with the Raptors going in everybody's face, too. And then you got Joel Embiid just being a player hyped up for his team in the NBA the day after the game says, we reviewed this and we're going to give Joel Embiid a technical foul. It's very interesting there, Keith, that happened. And then all these stories are now coming out about the center.
Yeah, but he's lucky he didn't get it the day before, though. I mean, if you think about it, it's one of those things like, yeah, you can say, why do it a day later? Like when you know that you already it already happened. It didn't, giving him a technical now goes towards him once he does play, how many texts you can receive, and that can impact him.
Right.
You do get fined for getting technicals. But you can look, if you're the Indiana Pacers, you're saying to yourself, like, look, this guy split a pair of those foul shots. If he would have got another foul shot, he probably would have made one. So you're like a day late and $1 short, according to the Indiana Pacers, right? So it's like I'm with you. Like if they should have, if they were going to give one, they should have given Joel one right then and there, and be done with it. But it just seemed like the refs were struggling left and right, and I think giving them one now is a way to appease people, to appease the Indiana Pacers. But at the same time, if I'm the Pacers, I'm like, we were asking for it when it happened, not a day later. We still lost the game. Who cares?
Yeah, and you saw Tyrese Halliburton very visibly frustrated in the official's face, pointing to Joel, saying, he's in our player's face. He can't be doing that. Nothing was called, and then they review it, and then they make it a technical foul. You're right. The Sixers are lucky in that situation that it didn't happen. on game day in a situation where maybe you do get those free throws for the Indiana Pacers and they come back. It could be a different turn of events. But nevertheless, there's a lot of drama right now surrounding Joel Embiid, and not in a good way. So we'll see how Nick Nurse starts answering questions. Keith, you think he'll keep it close to the chest? So do I at this point. Unless Joel's return is a lot further than we think, then I think some conversations might start to come up. So maybe more fines from the NBA, or maybe we'll see Joel Embiid sooner than we think. But not in the next game. We won't see Paul George or Joel Embiid against the Pistons. We'll break that down coming up. And there is no better feeling than experiencing games live in the atmosphere. And that's why Game Time is on top with their deals to make sure that anybody and everybody can go to games for good deals. So we have to touch on another Philadelphia team, and it's going to be in the Eagles. They must anticipate a matchup December 1st against the Ravens. Right now, you can get a super deal all in for $549. The top 1% value for the lower corner section, $119. Row 6 in the super deal. Game Time has a ton of options for this game, as it will be Lamar Jackson taking on Jalen Hurts, something you won't want to miss them battling out. There are so many amazing deals on Game Time that you have to make sure you get to. What's better than Game Time deals? I'm going to tell you absolutely nothing. I have used this app a ton of times, and I've gone to Sixers games and Eagles games myself, and they always have the best deals. And I've told a lot of my friends as well that like to go to these games to use it, and they said there's no such better thing than Game Time to be able to go to games, especially in the city of Philadelphia. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, make an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and use code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today, because what time is it? It is game time. And it is game time, except for the two superstars in Philadelphia. It continues to happen. Paul George, Joel Embiid. Keith, you're the expert on this situation. We've already touched on Joel a little bit. What's going on with Paul George? Do you think we'll see him this week at all, even against the Grizzlies coming up the game after the Pistons? Or is his recovery still going to take a little bit of time? Are they saying anything about PG that they're not saying that we know about Joel Embiid?
No, they're not saying anything. I mean, they're sending out a press release saying they did portions of practice, which says they didn't scrimmage yet. They weren't full participants, or they didn't scrimmage in a practice setting yet, right? So here's the deal. It was weird because while practice was going on, they were having a hard scrimmage, and you can hear it. We weren't in there because when they let you in, typically they're shooting foul shots or doing stuff like that. They don't really want the media in there. So, but you're outside and you're listening, and you're hearing them going hard, and they were going hard for a long time. And you're saying to yourself, okay, PG and Embiid are out there working out, right? Mm. Well, I walk outside to make a phone call, and lo and behold, I see Paul George in the parking lot talking to one of the player development coaches. So I'm like, okay, I guess he's not out there, right? So, I feel like what it is we talked about this a couple of days ago, where, they have 2 games this week. That gives them 4 days of practice time. You look at the Detroit Pistons and you see where Detroit dropped to 0-4. The Pistons are struggling mightily. So I think they're 26 in scoring in the league out of 30 teams. So it's one of those things where, okay, well, we don't have to rush them back. We can miss this game and then possibly bring them back on Saturday. So, I think that's what they're looking at right now. If I do believe if they would have lost to the Indiana Pacers and started out 0-3, we would probably see Paul George playing tomorrow night or playing tonight. So that's what I think that would have happened. But yeah, I was shocked when I just knew he was on the floor, getting it in, practicing with teammates, and I go outside and I see him outside in the parking lot talking to someone.
We've got breaking news and the inside scoop, everybody, from Keith Pompey. Always doing a fantastic job covering the Philadelphia 76ers. But, it's interesting to look at because Paul George, I'm really not as worried about. You looked at him playing preseason. His conditioning was up there. He really helped the team get back into the game. Yes, maybe he's not scrimmaging as much, but I'm not worried about him getting on the court when he's ready to come back. I think he'll fit in. I think he'll be good. It might take him the first or second quarter to really get intertwined with the team, but I think it will work out. My biggest worry is easily Joel Embiid, because year after year, every time he's come off an injury, it's been the conditioning aspect that you're always worried about. And even if he did lose 15 to 20 pounds, that's great, but there's nothing like game time speed. And for his position, the way he plays at a dominating high caliber, he needs to play games to get to that game shape back. So when you're looking at it and they're consistently not telling us what's going on, maybe not even playing in scrimmages, it's a little bit worrisome. And listen, I get they don't need them back against the Pistons, but to me, Keith, if these two guys were healthy, this is the exact game I would want to see them back, because you don't have to play them a lot of minutes. I understand you think it might be a guaranteed win. That's fine. But at the same time, if it is a guaranteed win, then you can slowly bring Paul George and Joel Embiid back and slowly get them into the rotation and still come out with a win. I get it's not ideal, but it's better than going into your schedule and saying, oh, we're going to play the Grizzlies and then the Suns, and all of a sudden bring these two guys back and expect them to play at full force. So to me, if these guys are healthy, I would have liked to see them in this game against the Pistons. Are they? We don't know. They're not telling us anything, so we don't want to assume. Clearly, it doesn't look like they are, but at the same time, I'm going to have to disagree with the organization's move here, because I think this would have been the game to slowly get them back into that game shape.
I agree 100%. This is a game that you normally bring people back in, like when you play a team like this, and especially as a home game. They already missed the home opener, so it's like the fans want to see them. The fans will get excited for them. Just get it in, have them play like you said. They could play limited minutes, rest, and everyone will say this is great. And then you'll have 2 days to see how their knee recovers. Now, if you bring them back on Saturday, the next thing you know, you got 1 day, because then you got a game on Monday. Then you have a game on Wednesday. Then you have a game on Friday. So, yeah, this would have been the perfect time to test out the knee.
And let's look at that remaining schedule too, because you look at it, not only do you have more games coming up next week on a little bit of a stricter schedule, but it's also not easy opponents either. You got the Grizzlies happening on Saturday. You have the Suns on Monday. Then you take on the Clippers on the road on Wednesday. Then you take on the Lakers on the road on Friday. And then, okay, the Hornets may be a game that won't be that tough for this team on November 10th on Sunday. And then you go to in-season tournament action, your first game against the New York Knicks. So, Keith, there is no right time to bring this team back, but it sure seems like right now would be the right time tonight against the Pistons. I mean, to me, I look at it and say, throughout that stretch, the only game you want to see them probably come back and slowly get into this rotation is maybe against the Hornets, but that's not till November 10th. And then 2 days later, you go and play the New York Knicks, which is a tough team that you're going to have to beat with or without those two guys.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. So you want to, I guess, I mean, you know what this does is it kind of makes it to a point that when you bring them back, they better be 100%, because they got to go. They got to go. Like, you can't make any mistakes. You just can't. And let's face it, with all this stuff that they're doing, like they need, this has to be a memorable season. You know what I mean? You can't be another second round exit, or even go out in the first round. So, the pressure is on Paul, the pressure is on Joel, the pressure is on Nick Nurse right about now. Y'all got to get it right, because you're not, doing things that ideal, like that people would like to see, or things that you think that the steps that people typically make. Because you're right, they tend to come back on a game like today against the Detroit Pistons, where they know they're probably going to smack them around, and they get a couple of points, and then everyone's happy. Everyone's happy.
And all this really only matters, and we will only be happy about it if they get past the second round. Then we're going to say, oh, they were geniuses for making this happen in the beginning of the season. But it's tough to deal with right now. But we're going to turn things to a positive note, because the current squad that's happening got a really, really good win against the Indiana Pacers in their last game, and they have a good chance against the Detroit Pistons tonight as well. So We're going to touch on Tyrese Maxey, everything in between, Caleb Martin, the guys that made it happen against the Pacers just a few days ago. All right, so the Pistons are next up for the Philadelphia 76ers coming into this game at 7 p.m. tonight. You look at it right now, I'm excited to see the score group. And I get a lot of people probably are just sick and tired of, oh, there's no Joel Embiid, there's no Paul George. Yeah, I get it, but you got to turn it into a positive thing, right? After seeing Tyrese Maxey play, come out there with a season-high 45 points, how hyped up he was, the way that Caleb Martin stepped in, the way that Andre Drummond did too. Not only does he have the most rebounds in the NBA right now, also the most offensive boards too, helping this team get second chance opportunities. This is a squad that I'm excited to see hopefully trample all over the Detroit Pistons, maybe some boos for Tobias Harris too. So I'm looking forward to it. Keith, we saw a lot of good things against the Pacers, but what do you want to see from this squad? Anyone in particular that you feel like might need to step up in a game against the Pistons? Because it might be a game where we can see a lot more depth in this contest, depending on the lead the Sixers can get in this contest.
You know, it's hard to say who I want to see step up. I think I just want to see people continue what they did, right? Yeah. I just want to see if they can continue to do that over the long haul. Like, for instance, Eric Gordon had his best game as a Sixer.
Yeah.
He had 15 points on 5 for 10 shooting. I would like to see if he could continue that, right? I want to see, Drummond continue to impose his will, like on the defensive end, with the steals. Maxey, for instance, Maxey had a big game, but, he struggled in the other games. Is this going to be the Tyrese Maxey that we've seen without Joel Embiid and Paul George? Or is he going to go back to being the other guy who was struggling mightily? So, to me, it's not really stepping up. I just want to see how people continue. I mean, if they can have, if they can just continue what they started. Like, I don't want to see any setbacks, so to speak.
And I'm going to go opposite of the players, and I'm going to go with Nick Nurse. I want to see him also continue to do what he needs to do. I get it. He's a coach. He brought the Toronto Raptors to an NBA championship and won it with Kawhi Leonard, Kyle Lowry, and the supporting staff. I understand that. But at the same time, this is a huge test for Nick Nurse. Who knows what's going on behind the scenes right now? Whatever it is, we know that Nick Nurse is clearly covering for the injured players on this roster. So not only is he dealing with that, he's also dealing with a team that had a decent game against the Pacers, but before didn't really look like anybody knew where they were doing or where they were going or anything like that. So for me, Nick Nurse, I'm not saying that he needs to have a set rotation at this point, but we saw a little bit in the game against the Pacers, Caleb Martin as that point forward. Are we going to see it again? I would like those same consistencies coming out with Nick Nurse. And yes, I get it. It's early in the season, and I understand there's going to be a lot of adjustments once those two superstars do come back to this lineup. But I do want to see some consistency in those rotations. What are we going to see? Are we going to see Martin and Maxey out there? Are we going to see Kyle Lowry and Maxey out there in some of the sets, near that third or fourth rotation coming in? If Lowry comes off the bench, most likely we'll start in this game, though, due to just not having PG. But I want to see more consistency from Nick Nurse, too. I think this is not only going to be a really interesting start of the season for the players, but also the coach, because at the end of the day, everyone said and everybody was super happy about getting Nick Nurse into the building over Doc Rivers, and I was one of those people. But yeah, you can coach a team that has Kawhi Leonard, Fred VanVleet, Kyle Lowry, Pascal Siakam, all those guys, but can you coach a team that needs to try to get some wins to be able to come out on top? So we're going to see if they are able to do that in these games coming up to you all. This is going to be a fantastic matchup between the Pistons and the action here coming your way. So the Philadelphia 76ers will take on the Detroit Pistons along with the Memphis Grizzlies. Following that, tonight it will be a 7 p.m. tip-off, and then the Grizzlies will be at 7:30 p.m. on Saturday. I'm going to go ahead and say the Philadelphia 76ers will be able to defeat the Pistons. We're going to add Keith Pompey in here once again. So Keith, for the Pistons and the Sixers, I want your score prediction. Who do you think is going to have a game high? Is it going to be Tyrese, Caleb Martin? How do you think this is going to go? Any chance Detroit gets their first win?
No, I don't think Detroit gets their first win. I think Tyrese will have a game high. I think that he'll do a great job. I think that we'll see Cade Cunningham have a good game. He's the point guard for the Pistons. I mean, right now he's averaging 26.5 points, 7.5 assists, 1 steal. Against the Sixers, of all the guys that they have in the starting lineup, he has the best average against the Sixers. In 5 games, he's averaged 18.2 points and 5.2 assists. So I feel like he'll have a quality game. Tobias Harris, I don't know which Tobias is going to show up. I mean, you look at it, Tobias, is a guy who, he's struggling right now. And I know he's going to get a lot of boos, because there's some people who I was here the last 4 years felt like he didn't live up to that $180 million contract that he has, right? So with that I feel like, he's going to catch it, but he's averaging 10 points. He's not really shooting the ball well at all. I believe he's like 3 for 17 on threes this season. So, I don't know. Like maybe the emotions may get to him and he may try to do things, but when you're struggling, you're struggling. And I don't see him breaking out of a slump against the 76ers. So I look at Tyrese Maxey as being the guy this game and destroying this struggling Detroit Pistons team.
Yeah, I wish I could say that the Sixers might lose just for the fun of the debate, but there's no way. I could say it about other teams, going throughout this schedule. Maybe the Grizzlies, they fall to. I could see them falling to the Grizzlies later in the week if Joel and Paul George aren't back yet, but the Pistons, there's just no way. And I promise I will come on here and scream in a bad way if they do end up falling to the Pistons, because that'll just be absolutely crazy. But you look at it right now, maybe the emotions will get to Tobias Harris. He was never a max player, even when they signed him to a max contract. And there's a lot of NBA players that are signing max contracts that don't necessarily deserve it, but that's a story for another day. So somebody that I really want to see, not even step up is not the word, but maybe go out there, get some more playing time in a game like this is Jared McCain. We've talked about that maybe starting the season, even throughout the year, he might not really get into that rotation. But this is an opportunity, if you're not going to play Joel Embiid and Paul George, to get those guys that are on the bench a little bit more reps and try to maintain that lead. So I'm looking forward to see Jared McCain. I think Tyrese Maxey is just going to do his thing like he did against the Indiana Pacers. So, Keith, let's bump it down to the Grizzlies real quick, because we're both in agreement that there's no way the Sixers, knock on wood, should lose to the Detroit Pistons. How about the Grizzlies? Do you see, we're going to start off with, if Joel and PG are not playing, do you see the Sixers coming out on top in that matchup?
I don't know. It's kind of tough for me to say right now. I mean, I guess they could lose, but it's kind of tough just because it's so far off. And the NBA is tricky now. Like, who's going to play in the game? Like, what I mean? Like, if somebody's like, okay, well, we want to rest this guy, Joel and PG aren't playing, let's rest them. But at the same time, we felt like they were just going to get an easy victory against Toronto, and we felt like they were going to lose against the Pacers. So, it's one of those things where I think if you ask me in 2 days, I'll have a better idea. Right now, it's just tough for me to say.
It's just tough to tell when you don't have the two superstars and you don't really know when they're going to come back, and you're not hearing anything from the coaching staff of when they possibly will come back. So, listen, let's just hope that there's no situation where the Sixers go in like they did against the Raptors and lose against the Pistons, because, oh boy, we talked about Joel being in the headlines. The Sixers are going to be in national headlines if they lose the Detroit Pistons for Tobias Harris's homecoming in Philadelphia. So we will wait and see. Once again, tip-off for this game is tonight at 7 p.m. No PG, no Joel Embiid, but this team more than well equipped to beat the Detroit Pistons, who are clearly struggling to start out the season. Well, thank you all so much for tuning in to Locked On 76ers. And remember, your favorite podcast now has a newsletter introducing the Locked On 76ers daily newsletter, one stop for ultimate team and league coverage, delivered right to your inbox. Make sure you sign up for free now on LockedOnDaily.com. That's LockedOnDaily.com, and start your day with a new free Locked On 76ers newsletter. We'll see if the Philadelphia 76ers can get another big win on their season against the Pistons tonight, and we will discuss it all tomorrow. Thank you all so much for tuning in to Locked On 76ers.